There is a plant that needs no irrigation. It needs no synthetic fertilizer. It grows in poor soil where other crops fail completely. And for thousands of years, it fed entire civilizations across multiple continents. But if you walk into any grocery store in America today, you will almost never find it on the shelves. This is not a new discovery. This is not some rare species found deep in a forgotten jungle somewhere. This plant was once one of the most important crops on Earth. It built empires. It survived droughts that destroyed everything around it. It fed millions of people across continents for generations. And then it was quietly pushed out of the food system, not because it stopped working, but because it worked too well for the wrong reasons. The crop is called amaranth, and its story is one of the strangest in all of agricultural history. To understand why amaranth vanished, you have to go back to the very beginning of its cultivation. Amaranth originated in Central and South America over 8,000 years ago. Long before European ships crossed the Atlantic Ocean, this remarkable plant was already feeding entire populations. It was a staple of the Aztec Empire. It was so important that it was used in religious ceremonies and offered to the gods themselves. The Aztecs harvested it by the ton every single year. They baked it into cakes. They popped it like corn. They ground it into flour and mixed it with honey to create sweet treats for their families. It was woven into every part of their daily life. Markets in ancient cities traded it alongside maize and beans. Children grew up eating it at every meal. Farmers passed down knowledge of its cultivation from one generation to the next for centuries. And it was not just ceremonial. It was deeply practical. Amaranth grows fast. It tolerates extreme heat that would wither other plants. It survives in conditions that would kill wheat, rice, and corn within days. It produces edible leaves and edible seeds from the same plant. It regenerates the soil instead of draining it of nutrients, and its seeds contain a protein profile that rivals meat. For a civilization without large domesticated animals, this was invaluable beyond measure. But when Spanish colonizers arrived in the 1500s, they saw amaranth as a threat, not because of what it was, because of what it represented. The plant was deeply connected to Aztec spirituality. It was mixed with blood during religious rituals. It was shaped into figures of gods and eaten during sacred ceremonies. It was used in ceremonies the colonizers wanted to destroy completely. They believed that eliminating the plant would help eliminate the culture itself. So they banned it. They made it illegal to grow anywhere in their territory. They burned the fields where it grew. They punished anyone caught cultivating it. The penalty for growing amaranth could be severe. Hands were cut off, lives were taken, and over time, amaranth began to disappear from the landscape entirely. Not because it failed as a crop, but because it was deliberately erased from existence by force. For centuries, the plant survived only in small pockets, remote villages high in the mountains, farms in valleys where colonial authorities rarely traveled, places where the laws could not reach and old traditions held on quietly in secret. And while the rest of the world moved on to wheat and corn and rice, amaranth waited in silence. It waited in the margins. It waited in the cracks of history. It kept growing in places no one was watching. And then something changed. In the 20th century, scientists began to rediscover what the Aztecs already knew. Amaranth is not just another grain. It is a complete food. Its seeds contain all the essential amino acids that the human body needs to function properly. It is higher in protein than most grains grown anywhere on Earth. It contains lysine, which is rare in plant foods and usually only found in meat. It is rich in iron, calcium, magnesium, and fiber. And it grows in places where nothing else will survive. Researchers found that it could survive drought conditions that destroyed other crops entirely. It could grow in soil too poor for conventional agriculture. It could produce harvests in regions where farmers struggled to grow enough food to survive. In the 1970s, the National Academy of Sciences in the United States called amaranth one of the most promising crops for the future of food security. Researchers saw it as a solution to hunger in the developing world. It could grow in arid regions of Africa. It could grow in the depleted soils of South Asia. It could feed populations that conventional agriculture had failed to reach for decades. Universities ran extensive trials across multiple countries. Agricultural departments published papers. International development organizations took notice. The scientific community was paying real attention for the first time in centuries. And yet, despite all this attention, despite all this research, despite all the evidence of its enormous potential, amaranth never made it into the mainstream food supply. It never became a major commodity crop. The question is, why? The answer has nothing to do with taste. It has nothing to do with nutrition. It has everything to do with systems and infrastructure. Modern agriculture runs on predictability. It runs on massive scale. It runs on supply chains built for a very small number of crops. Wheat, corn, soybeans, and rice dominate global agriculture not because they are the best crops in every situation. They dominate because the entire infrastructure of farming is designed around them. The tractors are built for them. The harvesters are calibrated for them. The storage facilities are designed for their specific needs. The processing plants are engineered for their particular characteristics. The distribution networks are optimized for their movement. The financing systems are structured around their economics. The insurance policies are written for their risk profiles. All of it was built for a few major crops over decades of development. And amaranth does not fit into any of it. Its seeds are too small, much smaller than wheat or corn. Harvesting them requires completely different equipment. Processing them requires different machinery. Storing them requires different conditions to prevent spoilage. Transporting them requires different logistics. Every single step of the supply chain would need to be rebuilt to accommodate a crop that works differently. And no one wants to pay for that. The investment required would be enormous. The returns would be uncertain. And the existing players have no incentive to change what already works for them. This is the hidden logic of modern food production. It is not about what grows best in any given place. It is not about what is most nutritious for human health. It is about what fits the machines and systems we already have in place. The system is locked in by decades of infrastructure investment, and crops that fall outside of it, no matter how good they are, get left behind. Consider the economics a farmer faces. A farmer who grows corn can sell to a vast network of buyers who already know how to handle corn. There are established prices set by commodities markets. There are established contracts with reliable terms. There are silos designed for corn storage. There are trucks and trains built for corn transport. But a farmer who wants to grow amaranth has none of that. They have to find their own buyers. They have to negotiate their own prices. They have to figure out how to store and transport a crop that the system was never designed for. Even if amaranth grows better on their land, the barriers to selling it are often too high to overcome. There is another layer to this story. Amaranth is hard to control. It grows fast. It spreads easily. It reseeds itself without human intervention. In many parts of the United States, wild amaranth is officially classified as a weed. Farmers spend money every year trying to kill it. They spray herbicides on it. They pull it out of fields by hand. And all the while, the edible cultivated varieties sit unused on the sidelines. The same plant that could be feeding people is being treated as a pest to be eliminated. This is not because the plant is dangerous. It is because the plant does not follow the rules of industrial agriculture. It does not stay in neat rows. It does not wait for permission to grow. It does not depend on the inputs that agricultural companies want to sell. And when something does not follow the rules, it gets labeled a problem. But the real problem is not amaranth. The real problem is a food system that has no room for alternatives, a system that punishes diversity, A system that rewards monoculture even when monoculture makes everything more fragile. The irony is striking. The qualities that make amaranth difficult for industrial farming are the same qualities that make it valuable for a changing world. It does not need synthetic fertilizer because it thrives in poor soil. It does not need pesticides because it is naturally resistant to many pests. It does not drain the soil because it has deep roots that hold moisture and prevent erosion. It builds resilience instead of depleting the land. In a world facing climate change, water shortages, and soil degradation, these are exactly the traits we need. But the system was not built for resilience. It was built for efficiency. And efficiency in this context means doing the same thing over and over at the largest possible scale. Amaranth does not reward that kind of thinking. It rewards diversity, it rewards flexibility, it rewards farmers willing to work with nature instead of against it. And that is a different kind of agriculture altogether. Some things are finally changing. In parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, amaranth is making a quiet comeback. Small farmers are growing it because it works. It gives them food when other crops fail. It gives them income when markets become unpredictable. It does not require expensive inputs. It does not leave them dependent on corporations for seeds and chemicals. And slowly, demand is growing. In health food stores and specialty markets across America, you can now find amaranth flour, amaranth cereal, and amaranth snacks on the shelves. It is being rediscovered by a new generation, one bag at a time. But it is still on the margins. It is still a niche product. And the supply chains that could bring it to millions of people are still missing. The infrastructure does not exist. The investment has not arrived. The question for the future is whether we can build those systems, whether we can create room for crops that do not fit the old model, whether we can design agriculture around resilience instead of just efficiency. Amaranth is not the only answer. There are dozens of crops like it, crops pushed aside by colonial powers, crops abandoned when the machines took over, crops still waiting in the margins, still growing where nothing else can. But amaranth is a symbol. It is a reminder that the answers exist. They have existed for thousands of years. They were growing in the fields before the colonizers came. They were feeding people before the machines arrived. And they are still here, waiting, surviving, adapting. The plant that needed no water, the plant that needed no chemicals, the plant declared a threat because it did not fit the system. It is still growing. And maybe one day soon, the system will make room for it.